1, 2, 3, testing, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing.
to present information, and then we will hear from those who support and those who oppose the petition. Typically, each of those periods are 15 minutes, 3 minutes per person. But if we see a number of people online for either side, we can choose to extend that 15-minute period. We will then give the petitioner 5 additional minutes to rebut anything that was stated in the meeting by a remonstrator. And so I will note for the record that all 3 commissioners are present in the Nat U Hill room, and I will ask Commissioner Githens to go ahead and make a motion so we can put this on the floor.
I move approval of ordinance 2024-29, the Trails at Robertson Farm PUD.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Is that the correct ordinance number?
Yeah.
I have 28 on
Okay,
mine.
I
that's-
read
yeah.
from the old stuff. Sorry,
Ah,
I will
very
amend mine
Yeah.
to ordinance 2024-28. Thank you.
Thank you.
Second.
Good. Thank you. No, I appreciate that. We did go back and forth on that number a few times, so. All right. And with that, we will invite Mr. Brown. And again, I want to thank everybody for being here because this is not our typical hour, but because we saw so many interested people in the community regarding this petition, we wanted to give folks an opportunity to speak outside of our usual 10 a.m. meeting time. So we have Daniel Brown joining us from the Planning Department. If you would present this petition to us, and then we'll have questions from the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So the purpose of this is to establish a planned unit development at 4691 South Victor Pike. The petitioner is requesting a planned unit development to be established at this location in order to develop a series of residential structures. Should this petition be approved, the petitioner will be proposing to subdivide the property into 136 residential lots containing single-family residences, single-family paired homes, in other words, duplexes, and single-family attached dwellings, in other words, triplexes and townhomes that will each be situated on their own lot with a shared wall. The development also includes 2 ingress-egress points along South Victor Pike, 1 connection to the Clear Creek Trail, and 1 connection to the Bloomington Rail Trail. So approval of this outline plan amendments will amend the zoning map and allow for a mix of single-family residential types, some currently not permitted by right in the current zoning ordinance. The next step, if approved, would be for the petitioner to file a major subdivision application that will need to be approved by the Plan Commission. It is worth noting the petitioner has obtained capacity letters for utilities, including 1 for sewer. There were 2 previous petitions for this property. One was a rezone attempt to planned unit development, petition number 2012-PUO-6, which was withdrawn, and REZ 21-1, where the petition attempted to have the property rezoned from estate residential 1 to medium density residential in order to then subdivide it into a similar residential layout. REZ 21-1 was denied by the county commissioners on September 29th, 2021 by a vote of 3-0. So following the positive recommendation from the Plan Commission, new materials have been submitted to staff, which have been included in this packet at the very end. The first item is a letter from the petitioner to the Board of Commissioners. 2 is a new lot layout plan for the proposed PUD outline plan that was submitted by the petitioner. The primary differences are that from the plan that was reviewed by the Plan Commission on June 18th are in regard to the orientation of open space and the number of proposed residential lots. There was some issue discussed during the Plan Commission about a lot of the open space being under a utility line for electric. That open space has since been redistributed mostly to remove the proposed open space along that utility line, And in return, each of the residential lots that are in proposed area D all have dedicated open space towards the rear of the property. The number of lots was also decreased from 137 to 136. As a side note, during the Plan Commission meeting, the site plan had numbered 139 lots, but it was noticed by staff that 2 of the numbers had been skipped over. So it's gone from 137 to 136 due to a lot effectively being absorbed into the proposed open space area along the northeast corner. No new area plan or tree preservation plan were submitted along with this new proposed lot layout. However, the surveyor that the petitioner has been working with has confirmed that they will still be meeting the 25% open space. The design standards, such as the minimum lot size, have also not changed since the Plan Commission packet. Number 3 was a map of an electric power line that runs across several properties in Monroe County. This is the utility line that I mentioned in point 2. The same power line runs across the subject property from north to south and runs across several of the proposed lots. Number 4 is letters of support for the trails of Robertson Farms. Staff received a request from the petitioner to supply letters and postcards of support that were included in the former rezone petition that was denied, REZ-21-1. Number 5 are 3 letters of support that were issued to the planning departments by the petitioner, but these were letters instead for PUO 23-7, which is what we're reviewing tonight. Number 6 was further remonstrance submitted by Dave and Patty Bush, as well as Guy Loftman. These consisted of postcards that were filled out by members of the public, as well as emails that were sent to planning staff, and in the case of Guy Loftman, addressed to the county commissioners as well. So here are the proposed design standards. 38 lots will constitute Area A, which will be effectively duplexes with a minimum lot size of 0.12 acres. My understanding is that each home will have their own lot, but have a shared wall and property line. Area B is 39 lots, and that is triplexes that are in a similar arrangement to the duplexes with a minimum lot size of 0.1 acre. Area C is single-family residential detached with a higher density, and that has a minimum lot size of 0.22 acres. And Area D is 37 lots with single-family residential detached with lower density, and that has a minimum lot size of 0.3 acres. Here is the initial layout for PUO 23-7 on the left, and the new proposal that is laid out on the right. This is the one that was included in new materials in the packet. And here's just an image of the newest site plan in and of itself. And here is where it's broken down by area. The blue will be Area A, duplexes. Area B is in red, triplexes. Area C is in green, single family detached with high density. And Area D is in orange, which is single family detached with lower density. And here is also the tree preservation plan. This was not updated to, this is the same one that was presented during the Plan Commission meeting on June 18th. And here's just the location map and the zoning map of the subject property, as well as the comprehensive plan map and the site conditions map. So there was some finding by staff. The current zoning of the property is estate residential, which has a minimum lot size of 1 acre. The comprehensive plan for this area includes the Monroe County Urbanizing Area Phase 1, which was adopted in 2015 as mixed residential, and the Monroe County Urbanizing Area Phase 2, which was adopted in 2017 as neighborhood development. Neighborhood Development N2 did not have a proposed minimum lot size, but it was proposing a mix of housing types, anywhere from multifamily to single family. The CDO draft zoning map also has this property listed as Community Development, or CD for short, and that has a minimum lot size of 0.21 acres. The zoning ordinance and the comprehensive plan are at odds, but both are part of the PUD review considerations. And here are just some site photos of the property. There is an existing home on the property, as well as a wide expanse of grassland. Another view of the house and some accessory structures, and a view of the field. So for remonstrance, staff has received remonstrance from 312 unique individuals. 308 had their remonstrance included in the Plan Commission staff report for the meeting that was heard on June 18th. That staff report lists 309, but it was found that one individual was accidentally counted twice. 290 pieces of remonstrance were delivered via signed postcards, seen as the example on the right. These postcards were scanned as PDFs and then emailed to staff. It was noted during the work session there was a question of whether we had seen the actual postcards. Guy Loftman came in with the postcards and showed them to me, so I can say that I have seen them. Several individuals also delivered multiple items of remonstrance and therefore were not considered unique remonstrators, such as sending an email and then signing one of the postcards or simply sending multiple emails. These are the percentages rounded to the nearest hundredth. 98.10% of the remonstrators sent in a postcard. 8.33% sent in a formal unique letter, and 2.56% sent in both. Of the 312 individuals, 51 had their address within a quarter mile of the petition site. 170 remonstrators submitted remonstrance prior to the preliminary hearing on January 16th. Remonstrance from 138 individuals was received between the preliminary hearing and the final hearing of the Plan Commission on June 18th. And after the final hearing, Davy and Patty Bush submitted a remonstrance for this petition. These included 4 additional postcards, which were included in the work session packet under new materials and were included in the formal packet as well. Between the work session and this formal session, staff also received a letter from Dave and Patty Bush, and staff was CC'd on 3 emails addressed to the county commissioners submitted by Guy Loftman. The remonstrators above do not count towards the overall remonstrators on the previous slides, as staff had already received remonstrance from them. All items have been included in new materials at the very end of the formal session packet. As for support, staff received 3 letters of support, all submitted to staff via emails from the petitioners. All items of support were received after the Plan Commission hearings. They have been included along with the new materials in the commissioner's packet. One piece of remonstrance submitted was the entirety of the remonstrance from the former REZ-21-1. This remonstrance included materials from 129 objectors as of July 8th, 2021, 60 of which lived within a half mile of the petition site. And one piece of support submitted was the entirety of the remonstrance from the former REZ-21-1 at the request of the petitioner. That's also been included in new materials. And so staff recommends approval of PUO 23-7 due to the alignment of the outline plan with the findings per Chapter 811-6 review considerations, 811-1 purpose, and Chapter 831-3 standards for amendments, and is subject to MS4 coordinator and highway engineer reports, but includes the following conditions. 1, the petitioner is to add maximum impervious coverage standards per lot as a percentage under the summary table by area, which is in Exhibit 3 of the Plan Commission packet. 2, petitioner is to revise the outline plan to confirm whether streets will be platted as public or private. If they will be private, the outline plan shall be revised to state the standards will be followed as it relates or deviates with the manual for construction within and adjacent to Monroe County right-of-way 3, the petitioner is to implement a buffer yard type D on the south side and north side of the property boundary to better align with the purpose statements in Chapter 811 regarding buffering. 4, change the Karst Conservancy areas to meet the 50-foot protection requirements per Chapter 761. Relocate and remove as well as relocate and remove the proposed dog park illustrated on the south side between lots number 96 and 97 in Exhibit 4. That's the sinkhole that's on the south side. That's, I believe, the sinkhole that's on the south side of area B, I believe. And 5, the petitioner changed the site plan and outline plan to state that the open space plan for the northeast side of the property shall protect the delineated floodplain zone and not propose any structures in this area, including eliminating any proposed boardwalks. The recommendation heavily weighed the comprehensive plan designation in this area, mixed residential, and the fact that the current ordinance does not allow a mix of residential uses as recommended under the comprehensive plan in this area by right. Currently, the only way to achieve the level of mixed residential buildings and lot size variation would be under a PUD. And that is the end of the presentation. Do the commissioners have any questions?
Thank you so much, Mr. Brown. First, we'll take questions from Commissioner Githens.
I've got a lot of questions for the developers, but not a whole lot for Daniel because we were emailing some back and forth. I want to make sure that the Karst Conservancy areas are outside of the lots that they're proposing, because the map that I looked at, it looked as though some of the Conservancy area crossed over into the yards.
Yes, that is correct, especially the case for the sinkhole in the south side of Area B.
So how do we ensure that it maintains that conservancy?
That was part of the... I apologize, go ahead.
So another question is that there's supposed to be, I think, a 100-foot easement for utilities, and these are right now at the backs of the properties in Section D. Are the lots there deep enough to allow for that much of an easement? Or, I'm sorry, Area B, I guess it is.
So it was found that even though there is an easement across the lots, that area of the easement still counts towards the overall lot size.
Right. Yes, it will still count toward the overall lot size, but are the buildings actually far enough away from the easement? I want to know how deep those backyards are.
We do not have the construction plans with us at this time. The developer has not really submitted any for what the layouts of the actual structures on the lots are going to be. This will be noted in the major subdivision proposal, should this be approved, as well as any relevant building permits.
Also, sorry, I've got a lot of different notes here. There are different things that were picked out of the comprehensive plan. So there's supposed to be things like close to commercial. And I don't see that this is extremely close to commercial. And I don't see that it's necessarily safe to bike or walk to possible shops. And what happens if those possible shops never materialize? And also, there were times when the developers pledged to remove as few mature trees as possible. And when I've gone out to look at the property itself, especially on the area that fronts onto Victor Pike, there are a lot of mature trees that you can see them on the maps, and it looks like there will be a lot of mature trees, perhaps dozens, that will be taken out. And I have pictures on my camera as well. And so I think that there's some contradiction here in terms of what's been pledged and what will actually have to happen for this type of a PUD to be put into place.
Did you have other questions for staff at this point?
I may go back to it, yeah.
Okay.
Thank
we
you.
We can always come back and ask more questions
Yeah.
of staff once we hear from the petitioner too. So
Okay.
that's
I think,
never
like I said, a
closed.
lot of these
Yeah.
are for the petitioner.
Okay, all right. Commissioner Jones, do you have questions for staff?
I think Commissioner Givens kind of covered most of what I had. I would have to say that it's very hard for me to imagine how you could put that much impervious area in that space and preserve that many trees.
I don't have any, I do have one question. Maybe staff can answer, and if not, I'll ask the petitioner. What is the width of the easement for the main electrical line?
I don't know if we have that information on hand. That might be something that the petitioner can ask. It might also be in the packet somewhere, possibly in their letter to the petitioners.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't find it.
I think in the comprehensive plan, it says 100 feet.
Yeah, but I'm.
Yeah, wasn't it?
Yeah, on this map. Yeah, okay, great. All right, so are we ready to hear from the petitioner's representative? Okay, great. TSD, if you could put a 15-minute clock on. Petitioner's representative, please come to the podium, introduce yourself, and tell us what you want us to know.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, and thank you so much for taking time to meet with us this evening on a hot day. If I may, we only have 13 slides, but there is a lot of material. Could I please ask for 10 additional minutes, if that would be possible?
It's up to my colleagues. Colleagues, are you?
We want to make sure we share as much with you as we can, including answering your questions.
Well, questions don't come on your clock, so do you have, are you okay with giving additional time? Or
Sure,
It's just 10 extra minutes.
But I'd like to know your name, please.
Sure, I'm sorry, yes, my name is Donnie Adkins.
Okay. Yep, go ahead and we can reset the clock for 25, if you don't mind.
Thank you so much, I
Yes.
appreciate your grace
Thank you.
very much. I'm going to start with Daniel Butler from Bynum Faneuil.
Good evening. Daniel with Bynum Faneuil & Associates. As you know, I'm a civil engineer licensed in the state of Indiana. Donnie Atkins was just speaking along with Kevin Schmidt is here with us tonight. They'll be doing a full presentation, things that have changed, things that have been added since you've heard this last. We also have an extensive team that's worked on this, including hydrogeology, Red Wing, environmental, and you have all those reports in the packet to help protect different features on the site that need to be protected as we do this responsibly. Bynum Faneuil, since the last time you guys have heard this, has been asked to by our client to make this some changes to it. And the first change was to reduce the plan, how dense this was or how many we could get in there. So we're not trying to fit too much in there that would be overextending. Also, they asked us to hear the neighbors. There are a lot, as you can see, there's a lot of interested parties that have a say in this, have lived in Monroe County a long time, and so they asked us to hear the neighbors and make sure that, I believe one of the main comments that we heard coming out of the last Plan Commission meeting was, this is a rural area, and to make it feel more rural, to have not as much density, to even around the outskirts of the plan, make it not as dense. So that's some of the things that they've asked us to do when we put together a plan such as that. So we also have worked hard since the last time to produce a plan that would be in conjunction and get approval from a positive recommendation from Monroe County Planning. So we've achieved that from the comprehensive plan, achieved that from the Plan Commission, which we achieved CBU will serve letter and water serve letter. drainage board in concept in the Monroe County Highway Department. So that's what they've asked us to do. That's what we would like to present before you tonight. And they're going to start with their presentation, but I'm here with any questions about more of the, some of the engineering of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Daniel Brown, if you could go to the slides we provided you. Thank you so much. Looks like you got them up. Feel free to go to the next one, please. So like I said, good evening, and really appreciate everyone making extra time for us here this evening. We know everybody's busy, and we feel very grateful that you made time, an extra meeting for us here this Monday evening. A lot has changed in this plan, and we've done an incredible amount of work, as Daniel said, to try to solve all the problems, be as responsive as we can be to our neighbors in the surrounding community, but also strike a balance to provide attainable housing for this community. So with that, I'd like to share with you our vision. Daniel, if there's any way you could go to full screen, I'd appreciate it, so it'd be a little bit bigger. And our first slide there is our vision. And our vision is a neighborhood and a community that is very well engineered, designed, and sets a new benchmark for this community. A place where middle-class families can come and raise their families and be happy doing so and cherish it. You'll see my family's here, and I feel like I've got a great perspective on what families need to be successful here in Monroe County. We want to strengthen the surrounding community, and we want to respect and remain connected to the environment. And we want to make sure there's a legacy that follows on with this neighborhood for years to come, like many of the great neighborhoods around this county, where people, when they say I raised my kids in Winslow Farms or the Stands or other, good neighborhoods, everybody knows what they're talking about. If you go to the next slide, please, Daniel. Daniel, again, if there's any way you could blow it up, please.
I just tried and it actually crashed Adobe, so I don't know if that's, yeah.
Well, thank you for trying. You're gonna have a hard time seeing it, but I'll do my best here. So, attainable housing for Monroe County. It's talked about a whole lot, and we thought we'd put a slide in here to help set the stage a bit on where we are as a community. So, the last time a major rezone was approved for housing was in October of 2021 with the Blind Squirrels development. Since then, there hasn't been anything to provide additional housing per se. While at the same time, Owen, Lawrence, and Greene counties have had tremendous amounts of development in the same period as they've experienced similar issues providing housing for their communities. We know, and it's been in the news a lot, that in April of 2022, Cook even took a development outside of this county to provide housing for their workforce because it's become such a dire situation here. And then because of the housing shortage and because the values have gone up so much, there's lots of empirical data, and the one we'd point to the most is just how much the property values that the county assesses has gone up, which was 15% in 2022, 11% in 2023, and the latest data shows it's going to be at least 10% for 2024. And all of that, again, has provided, has compounded this problem and created the need for attainable housing, has just exacerbated the need for attainable housing. Right now, there's less than a 1-month supply for homes under $300,000 in this county. This board here made an attempt to try to help solve this problem, and it was a tremendous solution with the property that was only 3/4 of a mile away from us that was going to be a shared development with Habitat for Humanity. And that was an excellent idea and solution. And thank you so much, commissioners, for trying to progress that. And so, to compare and contrast ourselves to that great initiative, that property was going to have, I believe, 70 homes across 11 acres, and that comes out roughly to a density of 6.4 lots per acre. If you compare that to our solution that we're offering, it's which is 3.2 acres. We're half as dense. Some of the quotes that came out of that, Commissioner Giddens, you said that the project would help address the housing shortage. Mr. Cockrell said the county liked the location because of proximity to Clear Creek Elementary and the Clear Creek Trail. And then Commissioner Jones, you were mentioned saying it's just really nice to be able to provide this duplex and quadplexes in an area that has so many amenities of this sort. And we are providing even more housing only 3/4 of a mile away with the exact same amenities, if not even closer to those amenities, with half the density that the solution that you proposed yourselves. So if you take a step back, we have a solution that we're offering that's half as dense, is connected to sewer, which is what, unfortunately terminated that solution, is less than 3/4 of a mile away, with direct access to the trails and even closer to Clear Creek Elementary. And so we hope, that you find this solution we're offering is just as good, if not better than that one. Daniel, if you could go to the next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit more about the Trails of Robertson Farm and why it's the solution. So it will create more attainable housing that is desperately needed for families here in Monroe County. 100% of the utility infrastructure is available. We are one of the few, we're very proud to say, it took a lot of discussions with the city where they are willing to provide us will-serve letters for sewer. So we are ready to go. That will not stop us. This PUD is aligned with the goals of the comprehensive plan and the urbanizing plan, and we achieved full support from the planning staff, and we obtained a 6-2 approval out of the Plan Commission, and we're very proud of that. We've worked very hard for that. The density, we'll talk more about density, but it is consistent with the neighborhoods to our north, and we feel we're a great buffer. We will be a great buffer in between the north and the south, which is less dense. We'll talk more about the roads around us, and probably one of the most important topics is the drainage, and we've verified with engineering, and it's been approved and endorsed by the MS4 coordinator that we will reduce the outflow of the water coming off this property by 80% with our extensive detention pond design. And probably most importantly, it provides access for the 136 families to our beloved county trail network. Daniel, if you could go to the next slide, please. So we'll talk just a little about the evolution of this project and where we've come since our submission in November of 2023. We started off there with 165 single and multifamily homes in 5 zones with a PUD to allow diverse housing selection. Between November and June, when we went before the Plan Commission for the final vote, we had multiple meetings with neighbors, planning staff, and county experts to make many improvements. Number one is, although we started with a multifamily housing to try to provide the lowest price point, our neighbors did not like that idea one bit, and so we removed that from the package. Of course, that reduced some of the housing we could provide, but nonetheless, it made us less dense, as was requested. We went from 165 units to 137, so a reduction of about 20% with those changes. We simplified down to 4 zones and focused density on the interior of the project. So if you were looking at it from the outside, it would appear less dense. So we put the larger lots at 0.3 acres around the perimeter. So again, looking from the outside, it does not appear as dense as it would appear on the interior. And we align the open space with the county requirements by phase. So each phase we go through will provide 25% of open space as required. With those changes, we received very positive feedback from our neighbors and, of course, the plant staff. Then in June 18th, we were very lucky and very proud to receive Plan Commission support. And since then, we've made more changes that came out of that meeting. Probably most significantly is we reduced the amount of open space that is counted towards our open space requirement of 25% out of the utility easement by 75% and instead put that in a buffer area around the perimeter, which we'll go through. So not only before we had made the perimeter less dense with the larger lots, now we put a buffer zone along the perimeter as well to, again, make it less dense around the perimeter, and that's now preserved with under the open space requirement. We're calling it a buffer zone, if you will. We also, as Daniel mentioned when he went through it, we reduced the number of lots. And then one of the Plan Commission members asked if we would revise the HOA covenants to restrict short-term Airbnb rentals, and we've made that change as well. Daniel, if you could go to the next slide. I'm going to hand it over to my partner, Kevin Schmidt. He's going to take you through some more of the details.
Evening, Commissioners. All right. Oh, my computer doesn't quite fit. All right. So, summary of the petition. Daniel Brown did such a great job of going over the summary, so I won't spend too much time on this slide. Basically, the focus is we have 4 areas. Those areas have very different housing types, which we are very lucky that the PUD is available. It's a great tool to use to meet the comprehensive plan commitment of having mixed housing. So really, we tried to utilize that, and then also take into account, as Mr. Atkins said, the focus on how do we maintain that density, hit those price points, but also then meet the neighbors' concerns of density. So we really took all those things into consideration when designing this. So trying to craft a development that really met and thread the needle of all the different aspects that we were trying to hit. The 25% minimum open space is a great advocate here. It really does open up and add a lot of green space to the area, keep a lot of green space in the area. And I think that, you know, we talked a lot about the infrastructure and what we're trying to do there related to drainage and density, as well as the additional support that we'll have to do for infrastructure on the roads. So talked with the county highway and have full alignment there. So really focused on all of the county experts and making sure that they understand what we're trying to do. So if you can, Mr. Butler, if you can go to, or Brown, can you go to the next slide, please? This is just already shown, but the phases and then the areas. I want to just talk a little bit about how the phases will be done by area. So area A will be in phase 1. Area B will be primarily in phase 2. Area C will be primarily in phase 3, and then Area D, which is the less dense, will be done all throughout the 3 phases since it goes around the entire neighborhood. So these phases will be done over the course of multiple years, but this is how the intention is to build this out. Really welcome any feedback, but that's kind of how we've looked at it. And then if you look at lot sizes, Mr. Brown talked about minimum lot sizes, but if you look here, we focus a little bit more on the average lot size. So minimums are required to get certain things, but the average lot sizes are a little bit more in the 0.17, 0.23, and 0.32 area. Okay, Mr. Brown, can you please go to the next slide? So just visually, Mr. Atkins talked a lot about the buffer zone. So that was a real big change that we tried to make after listening to what the neighbors and the community had said. Hey, you know, we love the trails, which we do too. We don't want them to become just, you know, high rises all around the trails. So the idea was, how do we create an area that keeps trees, it keeps wooded area, it keeps all the things and doesn't allow structures to be built right on those areas? Well, so we created a buffer zone and a lower dense ring of housing, right? The focus here was, you can see all the green area, that's all open space. So that's all dedicated open space, cannot be built on. No housing can be built there. No structures can be built there, no sheds, no porches, no anything, right? And then the blue area is where you see all the lowest density housing, so the 0.30 minimum acre lots, right? Again, averaging about 0.32, but minimum 0.30. So we believe that with this buffer, we're now handling really the pieces to the north, to the east, and to the south, and really looking at preserving the areas around there without compromising the ability to provide, you know, lower value housing, right? Lower price point housing. Let's see, I think everything else has been covered on here. We talked about the MS4 coordinator, drainage board. We are actually meeting their more stringent requirements that this land is currently not meeting. So because it's grandfathered in. So we would have to follow more stringent requirements. All right, I'll go to the next slide. So These two slides, I'll spend a little bit of time trying to address, Ms. Githens, some of your questions. So, so some of the things that we've heard over the last year have been, hey, this is going to increase flooding, right? I think we've all said it, but really based on, and this is not our words, this is not our work, it's engineering work, and it's been approved and reviewed by the Drainage Board, that this is actually going to reduce the runoff by more than 80%, right? You say, how is that possible? Well, we're going to be spending lots and lots of money on building and developing and maintaining detention ponds, right? So it's really focused on bringing this up to current codes, and that's how we do that. So the trails will have a negative impact to the environment and trees, right? It was something you guys mentioned a few times just a few minutes ago. I think maybe Mr. Brown, if you'll go to slide 30 real quick, I'll just do a quick jaunt to some of our more detailed slides. So talking about trees, right? So there's about 350 trees on this land. Probably about 75% of them are located in the northeast corner in dedicated open space, will not be touched, right? So there's a percentage of them, smaller percentage of them, they're in that northwest corner, right? Probably about 30 trees. If you actually drive by today, you'll see that about half of those were blown down in the previous storm. So a little bit unfortunate, but obviously a part of nature, right? Something that can happen. So what we've committed to is based on looking at the tree requirements and what way we've written up the PUD is there will actually be 50% more trees on this land by the time we're done than there are currently. So you can say, well, those are all, we've heard a lot of, oh, those are small trees, those don't matter. Well, you have to replant small trees to get big trees in the future, right? So if we preserve the existing trees that are there, 75% plus of them, we believe that there will be about 100, and we've shared this slide many times in the past, so this is not new. We believe that there's about 100 trees that will have to be sacrificed to do this development, which is very small on 45 acres. And we will be increasing the total number of trees on this property at the end by more than 50%. Okay, Mr. Brown, will you go back to slide 9? Concerns around traffic was another piece that had been talked about a lot. We have done a number of traffic studies. We have done a number of reviews on this. We have read all the literature, and we have talked with the highway. And we believe that, well, based on looking at the county's information, South Victor Pike is considered a major collector, right? And the county highway approved modifications to make this road easy to increase daily average trips, right? And so the daily average trips, if you look at the daily average trips, this is the DAT number. We completed the traffic study and confirmed that the current daily average trips of 1,123, when added to the number of 877, which would be the total number added, the development, and 15% of other local growth, so we assumed other local growth in the area as well, we would still be below the 2,500 number that is considered to be the lowest level of congestion on county roads. Now, this is from the county's information and the state's information. This is not us making this up. This is from those specific pieces of information. So we felt very comfortable, and so did the highway that we talked with, the highway coordinator that we talked with felt very comfortable that with the modifications we would have to make, we would actually be able to make this a better situation and also possibly be able to help out Lighthouse Christian Academy and do some modifications there that would support them as well. If you go to the next slide. So overhead power lines, I won't spend a lot of time on this. However, you are correct, Ms. Githens, it is 100 feet, and there's a 50-foot on each lot. So it's 50 feet on each side, so a total of 100 feet. And all of the buildings would be outside of that easement. And if I might also add the karst, the major karst feature that you were mentioning, there's only one of them that is in buildable area, that is down south. The majority of that karst itself, the karst is all not in buildable area. The conservancy is in some lots. The majority of those are in easements, in the same Duke easement. So we would not be able to build there either. And then there are very small portions of it, the edges of lots that would not be buildable area. So all of the buildings would be outside of those karst easements. So I talked a little bit about karst features. Again, Mr. Brown, if you'll go to slide 27, just a little bit of information here about the details that we can go through about some of the things that we've done, the studies that we've done. We've had a number of experts come out from all over the county, review what karst features are on the site and how do we handle those. And we've taken the most conservative approach possible. happy to look at any concerns and change anything that you feel is necessary, but that is something we have definitely spent a lot of time looking at. If you'll go back to slide 10. And the trails is a place where density is not consistent with the area. We've heard this a lot as well. And I think that this is something that we really want to make sure is understood. If you go to slide 22, I think that there's a key understanding here. There are two different aspects of this area, right? There's areas that are served by utilities and then to the north, and areas that are not served by utilities to the south, separated by the creek and the trail. So the areas that are served by utilities, the same as ours, are an average of 3.7 lots per acre. We are 3.2. Obviously, if you go to the south, you're talking about not utility-served areas, and so therefore cannot be built major developments, and so therefore density is obviously much less. So we've taken all this into consideration. The idea here was really focused on the this idea of the transition zone, and that was how we came up with the more density in the center and the low density on the outside. Okay, Mr. Brown, if you'll go to slide 11. So just real quick, I'll touch on this. It was a question you guys asked in the brief of the previous session about HOA. So we do have an HOA covenant drafted. We are very committed to making sure this HOA is successful and fully funded. We mentioned that previously to the Plan Commission. What does that mean? What exactly dollar value does that mean, right? That was a question. Well, so our research that we've done previous to this was that it's somewhere around $50,000 to $100,000 of a reserve fund. So if you understand the way HOAs work, it's basically they get set up, and there's a certain amount that's funded by the developer, and then you send them a certain amount that's done every year by the homeowners. And that amount is supposed to cover 75% operating costs and about 25% reserve replacement. And so that reserve would be done by a professional, and we would have someone come out, they would do that, and then we would fund based on that reserve study. So something we would not try and get exact details right now, because it'll depend on all the development and all the details of the infrastructure at that time. But we are happy to sign anything you want us to sign that shows that we're committed to making sure that happens. All right. Maybe I'll hand it back over to Mr. Atkins for the final minute.
If you could go to the next slide, please, Daniel. We have a slide on remonstrances, but we don't have a lot of time. And probably the only point I'd like to make is we've done a lot of effort to outreach with the neighbors, and we have secured some positive recommendations from our adjacent neighbors, and we're very proud of that. There are a lot of remonstrances per se, but if you look at the dates on those, just about all, the vast majority were before these very significant changes we made to try to address the density issues, i.e. the buffer areas and the larger lots on the perimeter. So I'll just finish. If you go to the next slide. We're a solution ready to proceed. We're ready to go. And we've spent an incredible amount of effort over the last 10 months to provide a solution that we all can be proud of. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. If you don't know who wants to answer questions, you may come up as the questions are posed. We'll start with Commissioner Jones. Do you have questions for the petitioner or petitioner's representative?
Yes. We used to always talk about affordable housing. Now it seems that we're talking about attainable housing. There's someone somewhere in the world who can attain just about anything. I'm wondering exactly how you're defining what attainable housing is.
Certainly. With our townhomes in the center, we believe we can provide those at a price point of $285,000. And with that, we are confident that the vast majority of citizens, the middle-class citizens in this community, could afford that. Not all, but we are confident that we can provide that. And I challenge anybody in this community to provide a new build at that price point. There is nothing comparable. The only way we can do that is, in effect, by subsidizing them with the larger houses, which most developers can't do, and why we're going for a PUD that allows a variety of density.
I think the other thing just to mention is the affordable housing, that word specifically has very specific meanings, and it is usually government related. And so we tried to stay away from that specific word just because we can't commit to that, and we were trying to give you something that we can commit to. And so we decided to go with the word attainable. And while I appreciate that you're right, someone can attain anything, someone can buy a $2 million yacht, I can't, but we were focused on attainable for middle-class families is what we've been very specific about.
And then the HOA, I know that each homeowner has to make a contribution to that. Can you tell me how that's worked out and about how much it might add on to
Yep.
people's costs?
So we think, so based on the studies that we've done and our past experience, we think that it's somewhere between $300 and $500 a year per house. So I would say what we're talking, maybe $40 a month. So a very small percentage for what we believe will be a very well-managed, well-maintained community that really is going to drive people wanting to be there. So that's basically what what our research has shown. And then again, of course, that will all be dictated based on this reserve study that we were talking about. So I think the key is making sure that the reserve is high enough to begin with, that the homeowners are not burdened with that issue down the road. And so where there's a lot of concern about HOA failures, those happen a lot, and usually they are set up by not being set up properly to begin with. So just like a business, if you don't set it up properly to begin with, you end up failing. So we've spent a lot of time doing a lot of research and are committed to making sure that that HOA is set up properly to begin with.
So is your contribution going to be the reserve fund?
That's right. So
So it's a one-time contribution?
it's a one-time contribution to set up that reserve fund, and then the HOA itself, the yearly fee would maintain that, because the reserve obviously falls off as you spend it. Let's say you need to go manage the detention ponds every 10 years. And so you would put that in and it would say every 10 years you need to contribute this amount. And so that would be built into this. And so 25% of the yearly take on the HOA would be put towards replenishing that reserve fund.
Well, I still find this rather disturbing. I think lots of people don't understand what they're getting into with an HOA. It's nice and easy while it's all shiny and new. Once it becomes worn, used, needs a lot of attention, will they have raised the prices that people are having to chip in enough so that that reserve will actually be adequate?
So, it's a very good concern and something that the reserve study takes into account. The reserve study takes into account degradation of all of the infrastructure. It takes into account inflation. It takes into account increasing in costs. It takes into account all of those things. So I think your concern is very valid, which is why, again, a good HOA is set up with a professional reserve, and that reserve has to be well funded. Will HOAs go up over time? I think the answer is absolutely. But they should, if they are well funded, they should not go up dramatically, and they should take time to go up, right? So my experience with HOAs that we've been involved with is that usually every 5 to 10 years you're seeing an increase. It's not every year, and that increase is not going from $300 to $3,000 a year, right? It's going from $300 to $350 or $300 to maybe $400 over a 10-year period.
And I did try to get some benchmarks around town. Winslow Farms, I believe, is 320 a year. Bentley Court is 260. So just some analogs, some benchmarks.
Wasn't Winslow Farms where they had all the drainage problems?
Fieldstone.
Oh, okay, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm also kind of wondering, it sounds like basically all the trees that you'll be leaving are in unbuildable areas?
No, our intention and our commitment is to try and maintain as many trees as possible. Obviously, if the trees fall in an area that is being built on, in the middle of a road or in the middle of a house, it'll be very difficult to maintain that. But as I said in the slide that I think we're pulling up, we believe that that's less than 100 trees on the entire
What kinds of things are you proposing to write into that HOA founding document, and how soon will that kick in? Because you'll be building over the course of multiple years.
Yeah. So one of the things that we talked with Kelsey and the Drainage Board about was how they, as the county, put more teeth in managing HOAs, because technically they have the right to come and audit and assess fines and assess all of these repair requirements. They have the right to do that currently. So our understanding is that that is something that just needs to be enforced. But also we would, in the HOA document itself, make sure that it's clear, one, that there's reserve set aside for that, and two, that that's managed with, and there's a contact. One of the things we did talk about, and I think it was, whether it was a good idea or not, but this was a while ago, of actually having a representative from the Drainage Board be able to come to and speak with the HOA so that they know what's going on and they're involved, right? So that it's not a blind side, right? I think a lot of the things that you are seeing, that we are seeing in the county right now, are recipes of things that were not done well to begin with. And we are committed to doing it well to begin with. So I think that a lot of the issues that we've heard and a lot of the things that we've seen are because there's very little interaction, and we are committed to having that interaction. We have obviously a lot of support from Bonifaniel, who is very good and understands how to work with the Drainage Board and how to manage that. So, I don't know if Daniel, anything else that would be useful, but I guess we're open for your opinion. If you think there's something that we can write into, I mean, these HOA covenants don't need to be written for quite a long time. So we are happy to edit and add whatever you feel would be useful in there based on your experiences.
Well, I'd like to know if the detention ponds are going to be built before you break ground for anything else too, because as you start to do things,
Yeah,
that's going to be important.
They certainly.
So the detention ponds will be built, they're some of the first things that are built, and they'll be built as in the phases to make sure that they're managed. So that was also part of our approval with the Drainage Board. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just speak to that phasing a little bit. The typical practice in a certain phase is you absolutely have to build a temporary sediment basin that will become the final pond someday. So it gets all the wash off from, construction activities, make sure there's nothing going downstream, and you don't want to disturb the next phase, because that will, you want everything from that certain phase to funnel to your certain area for that particular phase, and not have disturb any more ground than you need to keep that buffer for a long time. And then that temporary sediment basin does become a final pond, which is quite a bit of work, but it has the final plantings, it has all of the work to be a final pond, but that's after everything is established on site, so that there's no sediment that takes up all the volume in that basin. So that's an important piece within construction. And actually Bonifaniel more and more has learned that we need to be on site and making sure that goes well, otherwise it won't function well.
Yeah, just to belabor HOAs just a bit, any new development's going to have to cross this bridge on detention ponds. So we are not unique in that sense per se. So this is something that's not unique to us, but we want to make sure we solve it. As we've talked about here, the right way, the worst case scenario is unplanned and special assessments to fix stuff. And the way you do that is a proper reserve study and well-funded handoff from the developers to the owners.
So I did read all 508 pages of this, including the comments.
Thank you.
Comments from people. One of the questions was whether or not there would be any blasting. And of course, when you're removing not just the trees, but the tree stumps, will there be any blastings, especially knowing that this will be in a karst area?
Yeah.
No, ma'am. There'll be no blasting, and we'll not allow that.
So one of the hydrology reports on one of the sinkholes, karsts, whatever, they said that there was so much junk in there they couldn't really analyze it. And I'm a little concerned about that particular one. There was rusted wire and things like that.
In our cars?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is an old hayfield and farm.
Yeah.
That,
I know what farmers, they find a hole, they dump stuff in it. Yeah. I'm not sure where it was. I can tell you, I've got extensive
if I recall,
notes.
it was one of the ones in the northeast corner that is not in the builded area.
I think it was, but also I'm concerned because once families are there, if there's rusted wire and stuff that stays there, we know that kids get into things that maybe they shouldn't, and animals get into things. And
Our plan is with the cars, just like at Olcott Park, there'll be a fence around it, the cars itself, to keep children out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's necessary to do a cleanup and a karst feature, especially if it's things that are unwanted or would continually add any type of downstream pollution. So you'd want to get those out of there.
maybe more will come up as we hear from people. Is
Sure.
that fair?
Sure, yeah, we can always come back to you if you don't mind. I do have a couple of questions for you as somebody that's followed this petition through this entire process more than once, in different iterations. I'm curious as to why the perimeter isn't a tree preservation zone. So you've identified on your map where you're going to preserve trees, but there are trees on the border. Now that may be, part of that may be a consequence of our bad GIS system, which doesn't have very accurate boundaries. But there are trees surrounding the southern and eastern part of this property. Are they on this property?
We can, Daniel can answer. We both have answers.
Anywhere that tree buffer zone, we plan to not grade in those. If those are found to be on our property, I think you have a great idea. Those can be preserved.
Yeah.
And we wish to. Now, when we originally did our tree survey, we were primarily, we didn't know if some of those were right, on our property, so we didn't necessarily count them. But absolutely, the buffer zone that we've now presented, absolutely we can grade in such a way that we don't touch those, and we can preserve those, absolutely.
Thank you. Now, in this most recent iteration, there's an open space map that we didn't see that the Plan Commission saw from June. But in the Plan Commission packet, it showed open space also along the utility easement. Is that no longer
So
on the table?
Based on feedback from the Plan Commission, so there's a lot of discussion at the Plan Commission, which
I know.
I don't know if you watched the video.
I
but,
did. Twice.
The ultimate feedback was it's okay to have it there. There is no problem. It's consistent with other neighborhoods in the area, but there was a concern from some of the members that we didn't like it there. And so we said, okay, we hear your concern. Even though we have the right to put it there, we will take it and move it to a different location. And that was part of what we did. So we took 75% of the area underneath the power lines and moved it to other areas around the neighborhood, lost a lot, removed a few things, created the additional buffer zones around the perimeter to account for that open space. The space underneath the power lines will still remain open, and it will still act as the exact same thing as an open space. We are just not taking credit for that open space there. So you could almost think about this like we added in an additional 7 or 8 acres, or 4 or 5 acres of open space.
But if you did that, then how come the number of houses is the same as what you presented in June?
So it's not, we reduced it by 1. So we took 1 lot and removed that lot to create open space.
Okay.
And then we put the open space on the back side of the trail to do exactly what you just asked for previously, which was conserve the trees and the areas there to prevent people from building right next to the trail.
But couldn't people put up fences and stuff in their own backyards?
So, yeah.
Sorry.
We would you might know the lingo or may not. In civil engineering terms, there's a conservation easement, and then there's also something called a preservation easement. And actually, there's just different things that you can and can't do there. And in this particular case, we haven't noted it necessarily. We just noted it as open space at this time. But it's, I think we really can and should put it as a preservation easement, which means there would be no touching, no fences. The fences would have to possibly be up further. Some solutions to gain more ground next to the trail, a little more privacy, a little more, if you're running next to the trail, harder to see in per se, those types of things.
So yeah, so there would be fences on the boundary of the property, but not fences in between the lots is what Daniel's mentioning.
Okay. So it doesn't appear that the karst feature has been number 6, the one that's furthest to the south hasn't actually yet been reflected in any changes. Of course, it's too early to do that, but
Sorry, I don't
it's
understand.
the karst feature, which is furthest to the south, number 6. You've got 2-3 lots that it runs through. Obviously, Duke's got an issue as well, but so that's not something for now, but I just want to point out that that's an issue. So I think I don't have other questions right now. Do my colleagues have any other questions that have come up? And
There was actually that karst feature cuts across 6 different lots. Yeah.
the easement needs to be 50 feet, so. How wide is that easement for the electrical?
It's 100 feet, man.
100 feet?
So that karst
From the
feature
center.
is, yes, from the center, so it's 50
Got
on
it.
each side. So that karst feature sits about 70 to 85% of it sits inside that Duke easement, which means you
Right.
can't build on it regardless.
Right.
And then the other portion of it sits in the edges of those 2 lots that we talked about. And again, we're happy to, if that's something it's a big deal, like you said, we can deal with it during
Yeah, this is-
subdivision.
Right, that's for later. But I just want to point that out, that's concerning to me. I just want to make a quick comment that Commissioner Jones raised the issue of attainable, and yes, affordable has a legal definition, a federal definition, but it's interesting to note, because I don't know if my colleagues had the opportunity to watch the Plan Commission meeting, but I wrote down from watching that meeting that the townhomes were going to start at $250, and they've already gone up $35,000 since June. I'm just saying that's what we're up against. And we can't require you to commit to a price point. It would be foolish for both of us to imagine that could be done. And that's a huge concern for me. Because already there's been inflation when the price of lumber just dropped through the floor. So I don't know. Just something I wanted to point out in case my colleagues hadn't had the opportunity to watch that meeting. But let's move on to, if we're okay with that, move on to public comment. And each commenter will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Are we willing to go ahead and leave both of those time limits open instead of limiting each to 15 minutes?
Can we get an idea of how many people?
We could try. If folks who are on Teams and wish to speak either in opposition or in favor, if you could raise your hand, that will help us. And then how many here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That looks like 6. Okay. Looks like we have 2, 3. Yeah, it looks like we might have maybe 5 online and 6 here. It's not a lot, so, but rather than limiting it to 5 commenters, is that okay? All right, okay. So first, though, we will hear, sorry, all those folks who are on Teams, if you could lower your hands now. Sorry to ask, but you need to lower your hands now, but thank you. So anybody who wishes to speak in favor of this petition, if you would come up to the podium or raise your hand on Teams, we would appreciate that. You want to speak in favor of this petition? You may come up to the podium, and please state your name, please sign in.
There's no sign.
Oh, wait, okay,
Oh.
never mind.
I can make one.
Sorry to ask. Thank you. I was going to say, I can look in the drawer.
No, there's not any. I'm just looking for our name tags.
Thank you. Please don't pull up.
Hi, my name's Andy Walker, and I'm a local realtor, and so of course I think we need more housing and all that. I won't waste your time talking about that because nobody believes me anyway when I talk about it because I have a self-motivating interest in everybody's mind. But I think it was worth clarifying this whole HOA issue because as I've listened to the meetings and everything, it seems like the HOA is seen as this like really evil entity. And the fact is, we can't have a subdivision in our community anymore that doesn't have an HOA because we have water retention associated with all of it. So there's always going to be an HOA. And it's certainly true that over time, there wasn't enough oversight of HOAs, clearly, and that the developers generally get blamed on that, but it's twofold. The government didn't provide enough oversight for them, and you guys are providing a tremendous amount of oversight now, which is a very positive thing in my mind. But it became clear to me that like the control of water in the ponds seemed to relate to a couple specific, because you guys are longtime Bloomington people, it relates to a couple of specific Bloomington situations, which is Winslow Farms and probably Saddlebrook, which is a high-end neighborhood, Grossman's Farm, more anecdotally called. They've had problems with their ponds as well. And I just wanted to make sure everybody understands that the ponds, the retention ponds that we have now, I mean, they hold water for a period of time and then they let it diffuse and they treat it. They're not designed to be ponds or bodies of water that people look at and can fish at and see it as pretty. If you're trying to create that, that's a whole different animal than what we have now. So, I mean, it's very unlikely with the science out there right now that these retention ponds that we're dictated to have now are ever going to have those types of problems. It's just, I mean, it's just not going to happen. So I just think that, like the petitioners have said, the management of HOAs is just vastly different now. I mean, I started in real estate 25 years ago, and during that time, I've seen the evolution of them, basically going 180 degrees the opposite direction in terms of what they're responsible for and what they do. And sure, it was a very common thing with development previously, so let's say 20 to 30 years ago, that the HOA would get turned over to the people running it, and it's just normal people. They don't really have the expertise in doing that, so they didn't do a good job. They didn't reassess how much it was going to take to replace roofs. Until 30 years after they got their initial assessment, they're collecting money on, so they're just run in a totally different manner. And part of that is that now, people like you actually want to see the covenants and restrictions. You didn't ever have to, there was a period of time where you didn't have to show anybody what your CNRs were.
Your time is up.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Appreciate you. Does anybody else wish to speak in favor of this petition? Please state your name and sign in.
I'm Tracy Lutz, and just like to touch on a couple of things. First of all, I heard that we're concerned about affordability and sustainability. Supply versus demand takes care of your affordability and your attainability. And then, sustainability of our community, when you talk about environment, trees are a big part of that. And right now you look at a big cow field in some areas of these, and it's got some pasture area that does nothing for our environment. So take a drive through Eagle View and take a look sometime. It was all pasture and had a few trees, some areas, not as much as this, but it's beautiful now. And you've got mature trees and you've got grass and you have something that's really good for our environment, better than what it was. And then you look at our other issues with the environment. I'd have to ask, is it better for our citizens, or actually people who work in Monroe County, to have to live in Greene County, Owen County, Lawrence, and Martin County or Morgan County and drive so far? It seems to me like the emissions from automobiles is a lot more harmful to the environment than people living in a community that's been developed for them to live closer to work. And then yes, you've got access to different services. You might have to ride a bike to get there, and it might be a little far to walk, but it's better than so much driving, at least for our environment. And that's really a big part of what we're having trouble with in this community is workforce housing. We talk about affordability in workforce housing, and you're worried about that. You call it attainability, I call it affordability. It's really the same thing, interchangeable, but supply versus demand fixes your problem. So the more supply that you have, the lower the prices are going to go. That's just economics. It's how it works. And we really need to pay attention to that, because if you look, our median home price is about $90,000. I'm sorry, the state's median is about 90. Ours is about $120,000 different over the last 5 years. Look at what it's increased to. So a lot of that's because we don't have enough supply. So also the paired patios or the condo type homes, townhouses, it allows a whole different market of buyers, young people and younger generations, to be able to afford to purchase a home and get into the market and have ownership. So including some of these in these neighborhoods that are designed for it are really nice. If you drive through the Highlands, I think you'll see the townhouses, and you'll see different levels and price points of homes, and it's a nice neighborhood, and it does it's what we need in this community. And if you don't look at it that way, our prices are going to continue to go up and up and up, and people will no longer be able to live in this county unless they're wealthy. That's how it's going to end up being.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak in favor of this petition? If you're online, you can raise your hand on Teams. Please.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is John Grossman. I'm a resident here in Bloomington. I'm here to support the petitioner's request. I'm speaking on as a newer resident. I've been in Bloomington for about 3 years now. My wife and I are very glad to be paying taxes here in Bloomington. We quickly learned of the challenge here in Bloomington when it comes to housing. It took us quite some time to find a home within our price range. We found there was plenty of houses in the $800,000 and up range, which was not in our budget. And so we were fortunate to find that. And the reason I'm here to speak is I've been following this project since its inception, and I feel like the density is very consistent with other neighborhoods nearby. Good access to highways, and my feeling is that while this project won't completely solve the issues when it comes to affordable housing, it's just a really great opportunity to make a dent in the issue that's here. So I appreciate your time, Commissioners.
Does anyone else wish to speak in favor of this petition? You can raise your hand on Teams or come to the podium. Does anybody wish to speak in opposition to this petition? You may come to the podium or raise your hand on Teams. Mr. Loftman.
I'm Guy Loftman. I've lived at 4835 South Victor Pike, right next to the Robertson Farm, for 49 years. There are serious technical flaws with the Robertson Farm proposal. It includes 1/10 acre lots that are smaller than anything allowed under the current or proposed county zoning ordinance. It is spot zoning that leaps over lower density development to create dense urban style housing. It counts the power line easement that Duke Energy bush hogs and poisons as a natural area. And it applies the general open space definition, not the PUD definition of open space, playgrounds, parks, landscaped natural areas, landscaped green space in natural areas. These buffer zones are none of those. This does not meet the definitions in the PUD for the necessary 25% open space. But I also want to speak from my heart about non-technical matters. Over the years, people have asked me, what makes Bloomington so appealing? I answer that it has a wonderful mix of urban and rural virtues. The university provides a steady stream of young people and young ideas, along with its academic resources, music, arts, sports, and the campus itself. The town provides wonderful food and its own art, theater, and urban amenities. But just around the corner is the countryside, now even more accessible through our excellent rail trail system. That country is under attack by the development industry, which would profit by destroying it. I understand. We have a capitalist economy, and capitalists will be capitalists. But I believe that capitalism must be regulated. That's what our zoning ordinances do. This cannot be allowed under our current zoning, and it wouldn't even be allowed under the proposed zoning. Depending on how you count it, White Oaks Ventures is taking its 4th or 5th or 6th or 7th bite at the apple. They bought this land knowing the 1 acre lot restriction. They've spent years trying to get rid of it. You 3 commissioners have, from my perspective, been heroes in standing up for rural values in Monroe County. I thank you for having done it, and I ask you to do it again. Please stop PUO 23-7. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll go to somebody on Teams, but you, in the meantime, you may come up and sign in. We have Erica. If you'd like to unmute, you'll have 3 minutes. If you could give us your full name and Erica's online, if you could unmute. Well, I would ask TSD to go ahead and promote attendees with their hands raised to presenter. And in the meantime, we'll come back into this room so we're not delayed.
Hello, this is Erica Morris.
Oh, sorry. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Erica, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Erica Morris, and I live less than a half mile from this proposed development. I'm joining tonight to express several concerns that I believe will have a negative impact on the area. My first concern is traffic. While I realize traffic studies have been completed and found roadways are sufficient, I disagree based on firsthand experiences. With the addition of Southern Meadows neighborhood on that road and Rumpke on the west side of State Road 37, traffic has noticeably increased in the past couple of years. It's not uncommon for traffic on Victor Pike to back up from State Road 37 to Church Lane during commuting hours, and traffic eastbound on that road to back up past the rail trail crossing the Rogers Street stop sign. Having both exits from this neighborhood near each other on both Victor Pike is also going to compound the traffic issues. In an emergency, such as a car accident on Victor Pike, this could easily make the neighborhood inaccessible for a period of time. As recently as this June, we did experience accessibility issues due to the storm damage, and the accessibility would have only further been impacted with a neighborhood with this density. Victor Pike is a main road used by emergency services. I'm also concerned about the petitioner's comparison to the Eagleview subdivision at a recent Plan Commission meeting. The majority of the lots adjacent to the Clear Creek Trail in Eagleview are roughly 1 acre, and the proposed lot sizes adjacent to Clear Creek Trail and Rail Trail in the subdivisions are 3/10 of an acre. The smallest lots in Eagleview are comparable to the largest lots in this proposed plan. So I feel that the comparison of the proposed neighborhood to Eagleview is misleading attempt to make the public feel that this project isn't as dense as what it really is. By planning standards, as you move farther away from Bloomington city limits, the lots should become larger and the housing less dense. This proposed petition will create an area of one of the most dense pockets of housing in the area. Lastly, since the petitioners purchased this property in 2021, it has gone largely unmaintained, which is not a commitment to doing the development the right way. The grass has not been mowed, the trees have fallen on the property, including ones that are visible along the Clear Creek Trail. The trees on this property were down prior to the dew storm. What was once a beautiful piece of property has turned into a neighborhood blight. With the discussion of fences and easements, this will become an enforcement issue for the county, not the developers, who created the problem with the design of the development. None of this leaves me feeling comfortable that the developers care about the neighborhood or community. I'm not opposed to houses being built on this 40 acres, but the proposed plan is simply too dense for this rural area. The argument need for affordable or attainable housing should not be a reason to allow development. The attainable housing issue is much more complex that can be solved by building more homes. For example, a $285,000 townhome pricing is not guaranteed or a solid commitment. This is not attainable for an average family. For example, the salary of a new MCCSC full-time teacher. It's not attainable.
Your time is up. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll come back to the room now, please. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Eve Loftman Cusack. I've lived at 4835 South Victor Pike for most of my life, next door to the Robertson Farm as well. I have been living there as an adult for the last 18 years and on a daily basis observing bird and wildlife from the trail. I'm an experienced birder. I have developed and operate a summer bird banding program through IU at the Kent Farm Banding Station. I watch birds a lot, so I do have a lot of experience in that area. Serious upheavals of the land surrounding the Clear Creek Trail section from Victor Pike to the roundabout could have dire consequences to populations of birds, plants, and animals that rely on these grasslands for hunting grounds, breeding grounds, wintering, and migration. This land is used year-round by a multitude of birds, including 2 species of special concern for the state, including the northern bobwhite and the American woodcock, both of which have been present during the breeding season in this immediate area. Studies show that birds decline by 50 to 60% more in modernized villages compared with older villages and fields. One study specifically shows that an increasing share of new and renovated houses in rural settlements is strongly related to losses in local abundance of farmland bird species. If the land is developed to the extent requested, what grassland does remain in this 40-acre tract is unlikely to support a viable population of these nesting species, and the influx of over 130 families will also bring in threats of house cats, which kill up to 2 billion birds a year in the United States alone. Building 136 houses will clear the vast majority of plants and trees from the area, decimating native plants and insect populations, taking away major food sources of birds and other animals. 148 species of birds have been observed in the Clear Creek Trail over the last 5 years, and 123 of these are protected. As my father, Guy Loftman, stated earlier, one of the things that makes Bloomington unique are the rural areas adjacent to our downtown areas. I'm a teacher here. I've been a classroom teacher for 25 years, and I regularly run into my students down on the rail trail getting out of town to come to the rural areas, walk in the creeks, enjoy the wildlife. One of the things I teach my students from day one is how to be good stewards of our planet, and I think that by increasing the density and decimating the wildlife in that area, we would be failing to do that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else in the Nat U Hill room who wishes to offer comment in opposition to this petition? Okay, we'll go back online. Dave and Patty.
All right, can you hear me?
We sure can. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I would like to ask the time monitor and the commissioners if it's possible, since Patty and I both would like to speak, if we could each have 3 minutes. I'll keep my comments brief, but I know you want to hear what she has to say. So.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Dave Bush, and I live at 1250 West Church Lane, directly south of the proposed development site. And as I have remonstrated against previous versions of the petitions, I will keep my comments brief. First, I would like to recognize that for distinct reasons, over 300 remonstrances have been submitted against this proposed development, and over 294 postcards have been received from neighbors, trail walkers, students, and visitors to Bloomington, and have been forwarded to the planning department, all urging that the rural setting of the neighborhood and the trails be preserved. Second, I would like to acknowledge the petitioners and their efforts to listen to the neighbors and remonstrators and to modify their plan to accommodate some of the concerns that have been raised. This is the best version of the development proposal that I have seen to date. However, I remain in opposition to this petition because it does not respect the existing zoning that we in the neighborhood have abided by for many, many years. Please vote no to this petition and maintain the best of our rural community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bush.
Can I?
And if we could put 3 minutes on the clock, TSD, if you wouldn't mind, please, and we'll hear from Patty Bush. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Patricia Bush. I live adjacent to this petition site, which I oppose for the following reasons. The environmental integrity of PUO 23-7 is not protected by bulldozing green space and trees and replacing with 136 units and 7 acres of asphalt. Rather, existing wildlife habitats, seen and unseen, will be greatly disturbed, if not destroyed. The Q100 detention basins are not large enough for rain events like 2019 and 2021, as stated by the MS4 coordinator. These basins do not decrease stormwater volume. The largest detention basin to the south of the site will collect and divert stormwater onto private properties without a drainage or culvert easement. This area of West Fork Clear Creek is already prone to flooding. The letter pertaining to Southern Monroe water capacity states there will be no fire protection, meaning no fire hydrants. With this density and the county's allowance of fireworks and open burning, how are the residents safe from smoke and fire? Over 300 concerned citizens have voiced their opposition to this petition. On September 29, 2021, the county commissioners voted to deny 125-unit development on this site. PUO 23-7 proposes even greater density. Planned unit developments are only permitted if they are better solutions to problems than abiding by the current zoning. This project makes things worse, not better. Please vote no to this petition and maintain the best of our rural community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bush. We appreciate you. We will now hear from Jacob Morris. Jacob Morris is muted. If you could unmute, please. Looks like we lost Mr. Morris. We've got Eric Spoonmore on. This is comments in opposition to the petition, Mr. Spoonmore. Did you want to add a comment in opposition to this petition?
Thank you, Commissioners. I got on a little bit late. Is there any way that I might be able to make comment in favor of the petition?
We've already had that part of our meeting, so we're kind of past that point. But we've noted for the record that you support this petition.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition to this petition? All right, looks like we've got Jacob Morris, did you want to speak? Your hand's not raised anymore. I just want to make sure that we don't, hands raised. Okay. Jacob Morris? Please correct me if I have the wrong name. It's the name on here. Oh. Okay. There's a technical issue. Okay. All right. So we will come back to the petitioners. You have 5 minutes to respond to anything that you heard. And I know I have a couple more questions, and I'm sure my colleagues do as well. Thank you.
All right. Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. So just quickly, I'm going to try and run through some of the points that were made quickly and just give you some feedback, and then Donnie will talk a little bit about some other things. So we were debating and adding in one of the things, Ms. Gibbons, you were talking about was the opportunity in the HOA. So we were thinking we can put in a requirement that they do a yearly cleaning or inspection of the drainage retention ponds. So that was something we were willing to put in the HOA as a requirement. Open space, Mr. Loftman mention of open space. We do meet the PUD open space requirements, 811-3ED. So we do meet those requirements, so not to be confused there. The traffic needs, the lady mentioned that there were changes in traffic. That's all true with Southern Meadows, but the county is requiring to put in additional traffic features. So I think there's a light going in at that road, is my understanding, or a four-way stop. And then part of our petition would be modifications to the infrastructure of the road. So it's not that nothing would happen. There would be modifications required, and those modifications are all approved by the highway board. So Eagle View, the mention of Eagle View. Eagle View is approximately 69 acres and 140 lots. So it is approximately 2 lots per acre, 2.02 lots per acre. That's what we have portrayed the entire time. So we're not trying to misconstrue anything. Eagle View is slightly less dense than we are proposing. That is absolutely correct, but it is not outside of the realm of what we're proposing. The wetlands will be preserved. That is where I believe the majority of the endangered species based on our environmental studies that we did, that was where the majority of them lived, and that is in the northeast corner, and those will all be preserved. They are in the floodplain, wetlands, and that is all being preserved. Let's see, water hydrants. So the water hydrants, that is currently the feedback we have gotten, is that they will not provide hydrants, but that is only the initial response. We have talked with them about the ability to upsize the piping and be able to provide that. They are amenable to that. However, obviously without approval, it's difficult to get them to continue to commit to things going forward. So I think that is the current situation, but it is not the end of the situation. So maybe those are the things that I wanted to mention. Go ahead.
2 quick things on the hydrants. They are amenable right now to flush hydrants, and so that is a form, but fire hydrants would be in the works, and definitely something we would discuss as this gets approved, for fire safety. And I think there was a comment that the open space would not contain parks, and I think you guys are aware that it does contain parks in our open space. Anything else?
Donnie, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll just close it for us. Really appreciate everyone's time. Mr. Loftman made the point about how Bloomington is such an incredible place to raise a family, and I tell all my colleagues that as well. And I think that's the exact share it with 136 more new families. Allow them to share it, allow them to take advantage of the trails, our wonderful schools, the athletics, and everything great about this community. Daniel, if you're still on, if you could go to slide 11. Slide 16. I'd just like to close with a quote from the Plan Commission from Mr. Pittsford. As we were trying to frame how to close this, we thought we'd share this with everybody who didn't get a chance to watch the video a couple times. He was referring to the Plan Commission, which he said is the voice of the people, and to the extent that we represent a shared public vision that's expressed in the Monroe County Comprehensive Plan, and that we are also charged with making sure the petitioners are in conformity with the Monroe County Ordinance. When we hear public comments for the purpose of allowing those people to identify inconsistencies, inequity, or unfairness in those two documents, to simply give preference, though, to the neighbors because they do not like a particular use or a specific proposed design is unfair to petitioners who have crafted a design that is consistent with our guiding documents. What's more, it creates an insurmountable, impractical, and unpredictability that tremendously limits any would-be developers in this county. I could go on, but I want to pass that on. And, you know, at where we started, this parcel is such a unique place, and it's a tremendous opportunity. And it would be a tremendous shame if those 136 new families didn't get the opportunity to reside in this community and instead were forced to move to Owen, Greene, Lawrence, or any of the other counties versus living here and enjoying it as much as we do. I'd like for y'all to consider sharing the American dream in Bloomington with those families. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, did my colleagues have additional questions? I'll start with Commissioner Githens this time.
Sure. At this point, there's currently a well, or at least one well on that property. How will you take care of that so that that does not become a problem?
Yes, we're aware that those have environmental ways that you need to cap those, and that would be a restriction here. Now we wouldn't be building any structures or anything over that, but that would be capped. We wouldn't be able to use that any longer. All water would be required to come from ultimately actually CBU that goes through South Monroe Water Association.
So going on to CBU, are you then effectively signing an annexation remonstrance waivers for all the proposed homeowners?
We haven't been asked for that yet.
Will be. It's what they're requiring at this point. We couldn't, I mean, Wendy Goodlett was here with Habitat. She's since left. We could not get that Habitat place built, even though it was 3 lots outside the city, because of that issue. And so I think that people need to know in advance going into this what all that will mean for them going forward.
Certainly, if we're forced to make that decision, we will share our decision with the potential homeowners.
It needs to be written into the deeds specifically, and sometimes it is not. One of the things that I forgot to ask earlier is in the comprehensive plan, it indicates that transportation issues are an issue, and I wanted to know if the streets are going to be wide enough for the current Bloomington Transit buses to get out, because supposedly that's one of the things that we should be looking at to ensure that we don't increase the cars and things like that.
And the community be served and can get around. Do you want to touch on the changes?
Are you referring to school buses, or are you referring to a additional route from the
additional route from the Bloomington Transit, because their buses usually are longer than those school buses.
Yes, the actual geometrics, that we run throughout the site are wide enough to have school buses or any type of bus that goes through them. We have not provided a type of, but we have the software actually to run that bus through our site, so we could provide that if you need, but yes, they are.
I'm also concerned, I know you're going to be bringing in a lot of heavy equipment if you were to get approval, and that Victor Pike is a twisty, curvy road at different places, and I'm really concerned about damage to existing county roads. I know you'll be asked to put up a bond, but I want to make sure that that has been taken into account with anything that's going on.
So I mean, any heavy equipment that's coming in that would damage the road would be coming in on a flatbed or on a truck, and then dropped off on site. But yeah, I mean, we also have very close access to the highway, so it is not very far from major highway. So I think that it's a very valid concern and something that we would manage just like any other construction project. Southern Meadows, for example, is similar. I think I mean, I'm not exactly sure what they're doing, but I would imagine they would have similar issues.
If it is something that feels like we need to propose some kind of bond that feels right. I don't think that would be out of the question to ask for as a condition of approval.
Yeah, to repair existing infrastructure.
It's found, yes.
Yep, happy to put that in.
So was Mr. Laughlin correct that Duke Energy mows their easement? How does that get taken care of?
They have the right to.
They have the right to do that at any time. If they may go through from time to time and actually bush hog it right now. So they would have the same rights, when we build the neighborhood as they have now to get in there and maintain however they see fit. They do work with us more, however, when there is a development there that they are aware of, that people are already mowing and taking care of it themselves. They're more unlikely to come in there and damage people's property rather than a field that is, unmaintained per se.
I want to make sure that they're not going to come in and damage people's property. And I think the one thing too, that when we talk about price points, I think that one of the comments we heard was very valid, that if you're a new teacher here in Monroe County Schools, you couldn't afford a $285,000 home. It's even if you and a spouse are both teaching. What kind of income would you have to afford just even the townhomes?
Well, we run the numbers all the time. And, the most challenging piece right now is how much property values have increased in the last 2 to 3 years and the interest rates. Certainly right, a single teacher in Monroe County Schools cannot afford it, but we are confident with a combined salary between $90,000 and $100,000, 2 teachers could afford it.
Didn't run the numbers beforehand, sorry. I know that interest rates are dropping a little bit, but yeah. Thank you.
It is, Commissioner, it is an incredible challenge. And that's why we proposed the multi-family, building at the beginning, was to lower the price point even more. Again, we tried to strike a balance by removing that and making the neighbors less unhappy. But it's a balance. It's a huge challenge. And that's why we're trying, that's why we're facing what we are.
Let's see if Commissioner Jones has any questions.
Just one. I'm on the drainage board, and recently we've seen a number of instances where people in these relatively new subdivisions who have bought homes have then decided that they need a patio or a deck or to put in some kind of paved area as a playground or something like that. All of that affects the watershed and drainage. So what you're predicting now is based on the actual square footage that you're planning on.
I'll let the smart guys answer that.
Yeah, go ahead.
We do have a C value for every lot that we build, so we don't plan in anything in the setbacks, so we don't give any impervious to any of the setbacks. But the C value is normally in that 0.45 to 0.5 range per home, and that was what went into our calculations. To date, what we've done is a sizing calculation for all of the stormwater infrastructure to make sure that that goes not only to the correct location and it's sized appropriately with 3 to 4 feet of depth, but also making sure that you don't add any volume to any certain basin. And so that is also an important part, and that's a critical part of when we grade the site. It also makes it very challenging because in some instances, we need to, you can always talk about the rates, but we also need to make sure that no volume is getting added. And if you do any type of stream modeling, then that will also affect that, because we all know that, if you affect one part of the stream, that can also have devastating effects on others, and that's what we've done to date.
I guess one other thing to mention there as well is a lot of those areas where you're talking about are actually currently either in easements or they're in dedicated open space behind houses. And so that would also further prevent people from doing what you're talking about.
We have seen instances of people doing things like putting a fence in directly over a stormwater pipe so that the fence posts actually puncture the pipe. Also, a deck that was built right into a drainage path. These are things that can make the drainage situation a lot less predictable than you think it is.
And like I said, we are more than happy to work with the Drainage Board related to the HOA. I think that's where you need a good, strong HOA, good covenants, good clarity. And again, if you start that up front, it's a lot easier for people to understand where the infrastructure is than when you're talking about trying to do that on a development that's been there for 20 or 30 years. So, yeah.
They're not 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, but it is right that it has to go into that initial covenant that goes, yeah.
Commissioner Gibson?
Yeah, I have one more question. One of the things that I heard this evening too is where those detention ponds will drain to. Can you be very explicit about that? Mr. Butler?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is existing drainage paths that come off of the site now. So those go to the south, into the east, and to the northeast primarily right now, and to a little bit to the southeast. That's where we're trying to hold water before it exits the site. So in fact, right now, the infrastructure that's put into place, we plan to reuse and make sure that we're not exceeding actually lowering, like we talked about quite a bit, that drainage value, to reuse the existing infrastructure that's there and reuse the existing paths that it's flowing off the site right now.
So would that drain onto the Bush's property, I guess is what I'm asking.
Correct. There is a culvert that goes underneath the path right now, and it's all funneled to that property right now. That's correct.
Other questions from my
Commissioner
colleagues?
Givens, would you like us to show you all the detention ponds?
I've looked at those things. What I'm concerned about is, I heard Patty Bush say the water will go onto my property, and they've had flooding there already. Some pretty extensive flooding.
The last 4 years.
Yeah. Along the roads, as well as, I think we do have an obligation to existing homeowners with certain things. And so that bothers me.
Right, and based on the studies, we're showing that the outflow rate that property would see would be reduced by 80%.
Right, I understand.
Current versus
Right.
current existing. So you're right, but we're actually helping that situation. We are reducing the amount of water from a rate perspective that she will see.
Right, but not a volume issue.
Right, but yeah.
Right.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
with impervious surface being added. Okay. All right. Any other questions for petitioners? Would you like to start with any final? So we're done with questions. Thank you. Thank you so much. And we do appreciate everybody being patient today.
Thank you,
as
Commissioners.
we go through this, and everybody's been really helpful in answering questions, and that's been beneficial for all of us. Did you want to go ahead and?
Yes, in 3 of the last 4 years, we've had storms that have done incredible damage, and we've seen excessive flooding from them. Our MS4 coordinator says that there's no ability to engineer beyond a 500-year storm. But with the frequency of these storms and the fact that they keep on getting bigger and frequently less predictable, it seems to me very likely that sometime in the near future we're going to be seeing significant storms that are beyond the level that people can engineer for. Ultimately, as far as I can understand, all drainage has to end up in a county waterway. And in this case, I'm pretty sure it's probably Clear Creek, which means that the load that Clear Creek is taking all at one time is going to be increased. And people downstream will experience consequences from this. And I do feel that people who already live here do have precedence over people who you might want to move here. And I understand that there's a lot of profit involved in moving people to this county. I also definitely get the feeling that if possible, people who want to profit on building would probably put the whole county under impervious surface as long as it was profitable for them. Bloomington is providing a lot of housing, and that's where people should be moving to. Their housing could be more attainable if they were to allow an increase in height in housing. And I consider this to be a much better solution to our housing problems than developing the entire county. And as for this particular development replacing the affordable housing that we had intended to build, I don't really see these as being equivalent at all. What we were looking at wasn't the county was doing it, and we don't look for a profit in it. We look to help people. But ultimately, the decision we have to make is whether this proposed PUD is better for this piece of property and better for the people who surround it and who already live there than it being a state residential. And that's what our ultimate decision does have to be.
Thank you. Commissioner Githens, did you want to make any final comments?
I could never be as eloquent as my colleague.
I know. Nothing? Okay. I thought you were going to try anyway. I do have some comments because this has been a difficult decision for me, which is why I went back and watched the June meeting. It was one of the few times I've missed a plan commission meeting, but figures I'd missed that one. And there's a couple things that have stood out to me, both tonight and previously, and I just wanted to address those. Commissioner Jones makes a good point. This is a nationwide problem. This is a statewide problem. This is a regional problem. Housing is an issue across the country, and one development is not going to save or prevent that problem from existing. And it is a bad problem that we have. But, I've also heard a lot, by the way, I've heard a lot of complaints from people who bought houses in other counties that were built as workforce housing. But nonetheless, it's interesting to note because both tonight and in the June meeting, the petitioner mentioned neighborhoods like Winslow and Winslow Farms and the Stands. Well, both of those are city neighborhoods, and yes, they're great neighborhoods, but they're in the city, and that's where I believe denser housing belongs rather than here. And I find this, this is when you do a urbanized area plan, you kind of look at the 10,000-foot view. And you do your best to say, this could be denser, this could be less dense, and you try to ease through the process that way. And I don't think we made the right decision on this property. I think 1 acre is what it is now. I'm not sure it could manage 0.21 because of all the issues. And this area has a lot of flooding for folks who are not familiar. There is a historic burg called Clear Creek, and Clear Creek is on Clear Creek, and Clear Creek is flooding often. We're in fact going to have to find a way to move some historic buildings off of Rogers Road. Now, that tied in with all of this new impervious surface gives me a great deal of pause. So if this were somewhere else, I'd probably feel differently about it. But it's where it is. And this is a really sensitive part of our community. And what we've heard from a lot of folks in this part of the community, whether they live in the neighborhoods north or south, or they live west or east, is traffic's already bad and flooding is already bad. And I agree with both because I've heard a lot of people talk about how terrible it is to get past that and Rogers most afternoons, especially when school's in session. And by the way, speaking of traffic, it is important to note that indeed Victor Pike can handle additional traffic. I agree. But the problem is Rogers and that cannot handle additional traffic. And this we know because a four-way stop is going to make things worse at that and Rogers, but I also know that that road cannot actually be widened. And I know that Victor Pike isn't being planned to be widened. So we're creating headaches and issues for people who utilize and drive through this area. It's interesting because the previous PUD was 125 units and this is larger. I'm not sure why that happened, especially with the removal of a multifamily building. That concerns me. It was mentioned that we've only approved one development, and that's not true. There have been a number of them, including Westgate, the Holland Fields, Derby, although the Holland Fields now apparently they're having problems getting sewer hookups, so that's interesting. And yes, right, blind squirrel, there you go. Couple other things, this ties into what I noted about development and density and this particular area. One of the first things we said in our comprehensive plan is to keep urban areas urban and rural areas rural. And I'm kind of holding on to that at this moment because again, this has been a back and forth for me for quite some time. I think we should be moving from a higher density where it is now, Eagle View, et cetera, to lower density, not back up to higher density, because if you look at the whole area, you will see that there is not a gradation of acreage in density between the northern section where the house is already built and where you have a much more rural space to the south. I just feel like this needs to be done differently because of where it's located, because of the sensitivity of this area. And I agree with Commissioner Jones. We respect the people who are already here, who have been here for decades or have been here for 2 minutes, who have already invested in this community over, planning something for imaginary people who may come. And we do have to listen to the folks who are here. And they have been very thoughtful and raised some really interesting issues and points that we've had to consider. Now, again, higher density belongs in the city. It's not a county. We're not going to solve the housing issue with one property. We're not going to solve the housing issue by building out the county because we're not constructed for high density housing. Our infrastructure in terms of roads is not there. And we would be passing that cost along through the HOA. For example, hydrants, that would be another thing the HOA folks would have to pay for. We don't want to pass this cost on to the residents of the entire county, nor the ratepayers of the stormwater department of Monroe County. And that's a real concern as well. That's where I'm at. It did take me quite a while to get here. Sorry. I appreciate everybody's patience. Did you have any other comments you wanted to make?
No, it's a really tough decision.
It is.
For me. It really, really is. Yeah. I've spent a lot of time, obviously, reading 508 pages and going back through part of the comprehensive plan to look at different things. Yeah, the plan is to keep rural parts of the county rural, and I don't have a good solution.
Yeah. Commissioner Jones, anything else you want to add? Okay. All right. Mr. Schilling, would you please call the roll?
And the motion is to approve?
Yes.
Okay. Julie Thomas?
No.
Penny Giffens?
No.
Lee Jones?
No.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Penny Giffens?
Yes.
Lee Jones?
Yes.
Julie Thomas?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. I really do appreciate everybody's time and effort, especially the petitioner's done a lot to manage, to make some important changes, but this area is just too sensitive. But thank you, everyone, for your attendance and your patience and your attention today. Thank you. We're adjourned.